the seventh night, as the tale of King Yunan and the sage of Ruya reaches its end, the path gently bends back to where we began, to the fisherman, the demon, and the fate that still waits upon the shore. These are moments meant for stillness. Let the hush of the night settle around you. Let the rhythm of the words slow your breath, ease the weight of the day, and guide your thoughts toward rest. There is no need to hurry, no need to hold on too tightly. The story will carry you. And if, when the night has passed, a thought lingers or a feeling remains, you are welcome to share it with us. Now, draw a little closer to the quiet, and let the seventh night begin. Night returned to the palace without haste. The lamps were lit softly, as though afraid to disturb the stillness that had settled in the chambers. Outside, the city slept beneath a veil of stars, and inside, time seemed to slow, moving only at the pace of breath and candle flame. Shahrazad lay beside the Sultan, the silence between them unbroken and untroubled. It was the silence of those who had spoken much on other nights, and now allowed the quiet to speak for them. When at last she stirred, it was not with urgency, but with the gentle certainty of one who knows the hour has come. She turned her face slightly toward him and spoke in a voice low enough that it seemed meant for the night alone. "Last evening," she said, "sleep came upon you before the tale had fully settled in your thoughts. I wondered, when morning came, whether the ending found you, or whether it slipped away." The Sultan did not answer at once. His gaze rested on the dark beyond the curtains, where moonlight traced pale lines upon the floor. "I remember enough," he said at last, "enough to know how it ended." "And how did it seem to you?" she asked quietly, "the matter of the sage and the king?" He turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "The sage was clever," he said. "He saw danger and moved first. A man who waits to be struck deserves the blow." Shahrazad did not contradict him. She let the words linger, then said, "So you find no fault in what he did?" "No," the Sultan replied. "The king owed him life and offered death instead. Gratitude is a fragile thing. Power has little patience for it." She smiled faintly, not in agreement, but in understanding. "Then the fault lies only with the king, with his weakness," the Sultan said. "A ruler who listens too closely to whispers invites ruin. Yet," she said gently, "he did listen closely when the sage healed him." The Sultan was silent. Shahrazad continued, her tone unhurried, as though recounting nothing more than a passing thought. "The king trusted once and lived. He trusted again and died. It is a curious balance, is it not?" The Sultan's brow darkened slightly. "Trust is a luxury," he said. "It must be measured, or it becomes a blade turned inward." "And gratitude?" she asked. "Is that also a danger?" "It can be," he replied. "A man who feels indebted may grow fearful. Fear breeds suspicion." Shahrazad drew the coverlet closer around her shoulders. "Then the sage's mistake," she said softly, "was not the poison, but the belief that his cure would be remembered." The Sultan exhaled slowly. "Belief is often a man's undoing." She turned toward him now, resting her head lightly against the cushion. "Do you think," she asked, "that the sage acted from wisdom, or from weariness?" The question drifted between them like smoke. "Both," the Sultan said after a moment. He was tired of standing in the shadow of the throne. "Yes," Shahrazad murmured, "and perhaps tired of hoping." The Sultan glanced at her. "Hope," he said, "is a dangerous companion." "So is despair," she replied. just as softly. Another silence followed. It was not heavy, but thoughtful, like the pause between two verses of a song. At the end, Sharzad said, the sage ensured that the king would never strike him. Yet the kingdom was left without a ruler, and the cure that saved a life became the cause of a death. The sultan's voice was low. Order must be preserved, and at what cost? She asked, not pressing, merely wondering aloud. He did not answer her question directly. You speak as though there were another ending. Stories always carry more than one, she said. We see only the one that speaks to us. The sultan shifted, resting his arm more comfortably. And which spoke to you? That fear, she said, can be louder than gratitude. And that when fear rules, even kindness may be mistaken for threat. He gave a quiet, humorless breath. You speak kindly of kings, I speak kindly of men, she replied. The sultan did not respond. His gaze had softened, though his expression remained guarded. After a while he said, if the sage had fled, he would have lived, and if he had stayed, Sharzad said, he would have died. Yes. Then perhaps, she said, his choice was not between life and death, but between fear and dignity. The sultan frowned slightly. Dignity does not keep the head upon the shoulders. No, she agreed. But it sometimes allows a man to sleep. That thought seemed to catch him. He lay still, listening to the quiet. Sharzad did not hurry the moment. She had learned that nights teach more than words ever could. At last she spoke again, her voice lighter now, like a thread easing tension. The sage's tale has ended, but another waits, just beneath it, like a stream beneath stone. The sultan turned to her. You mean the fisherman? Yes, she said, and the promise that was made, and the promise that was nearly broken. He considered this, then nodded once. Go on. Sharzad adjusted her posture, settling into the familiar rhythm of telling. Her voice took on that calm, even flow that seemed to smooth the edges of thought and draw sleep closer. So listen, O king, she said softly, to what befell the fisherman after the sage's fate was sealed. When the tale had reached this point, the fisherman said to the demon within the jar, who, with avid attention, had been listening, know then, black-hearted demon, that had the king Yunan not lifted his hand against the wise physician, by whose art he had been restored to health, he would never have fallen into the pitiless snare of vengeance. And you too were minded to treat me as that king devised to treat his healer. Have you forgotten that it was I who drew you forth after 1100 years from your prison in the sea? And why, then, did you set your cruel intent upon my life? By heaven, I will cast you back into the deep, and here on this shore I shall raise my dwelling. To every fisherman who comes hither I will tell the tale of this jar, so that never again, not in 1,000 years, nor in 10,000, will any hand draw you out. At this the demon lifted his voice in lamentation and begged for mercy. From within the jar he wailed, O man of generous heart, once more practice the virtue of magnanimity. Deliver me from this strait and grievous prison, and I pledge thee a binding oath that never again shall I work thee harm. Nay more, I shall bestow upon thee such abundance of worldly goods that thou shalt live henceforth in ease, untouched by want or need. The fisherman laughed. You swear an oath, do you? And by what, pray, will you swear? The demon answered from within, By Almighty God, I do swear. The fisherman laughed louder still. You swear by God, have you forgotten your own confession? How when you stood before the prophet Solomon in the company of Asaph son of Barkiah, You rose in defiance and rejected the command of God's own messenger. The demon groaned, "It is even so. Yet after 1100 years of torment, in darkness and in bondage upon the ocean's floor, I have set my faith in the Most High. By his holy name I do swear that I will not betray thee, nor work thee any harm." Hearing this, the fisherman lifted the lid from the jar. Straightway, as before, a column of smoke poured forth, swelling and rising, until it took the shape of a mighty spirit, who, without pause, set his foot upon the vessel and hurled it far into the sea's depths. The fisherman trembled to see the jar lost to his reach, and fear gripped him lest the demon prove false to his oath. But the spirit laughed and said, "Fear not. By the God in whom thou believest, I also now believe. By him have I sworn, and by him shall I abide. Make thyself ready, for I shall bear thee swiftly through the air, and bestow upon thee a fitting reward." So saying, the demon lifted the fisherman and set him upon his back. With a rush of wings, he mounted to the heavens, flew across a mountain range, and descended at last into a vast plain where lay a shimmering pool. There he set the fisherman down and said, "Behold this pool before thee, filled with fishes of 4 colors. So long as I am with thee, cast thy net." The fisherman cast, and drew forth 4 fishes, one as red as coral, another golden as minted coin, a third white as new-fallen snow, and the last blue as the heavens at dusk. "Take these," said the demon, "carry them to the king of this realm. He will pay thee richly, and thou shalt want for nothing. Each day thou mayest return and cast thy net, and so shalt thou prosper. And now I pray thee forgive me, for 1100 years alone in the depths have robbed me of my wits." With that he vanished into the air, leaving no trace behind. The fisherman, following the demon's counsel, slung the 4 fishes in his bag and made his way to the palace. At the gate he said to the guards, "Announce to the king that I bring him fishes of 4 wondrous colors, red, yellow, white, and blue." So they ushered him into the royal presence. The king, marveling at the sight, commanded that 400 gold pieces be given to the man, and said to his vizier, "Ask his name, so that when we desire such marvels again, we may summon him." And turning to his attendants he added, "Take these fishes to the handmaiden whom the Emperor of Rome sent me but yesterday. Bid her prepare them for my table." The fisherman, rejoicing, pocketed his gold and went on his way. Now the maiden of Rome, new to the palace and this day entrusted with her first dish, placed the pan upon the fire. When the oil bubbled, she slipped the 4 fishes in. But scarcely had she done so when the wall of the kitchen cracked open, and through the gap stepped a girl of surpassing beauty, with a cane of green reed in her hand. She struck the pan with it and said, in a voice sweet as dawn's first breath, O fishes, do you remember the covenant of old?" And lo, the fishes raised their heads and spoke as with one tongue, "We remember." The girl struck the pan again so that it overturned, and the fishes fell half-cooked upon the floor. At once the Roman maiden swooned away, and the girl passed back through the rift, which closed behind her. When the handmaiden recovered, she saw the pan overturned, and the fishes ruined, and, knowing her first task in the palace was in shambles, she wept bitterly. The vizier, fearing the king's impatience, came hastily to the kitchen. When he found her in tears, he asked what had occurred. Hearing her tale, and being long accustomed to strange enchantments in the court, he gave orders at once that another dish be prepared for the king. At dawn the following morning, the Sultan, whose curiosity had only sharpened overnight, summoned the fisherman once more and demanded 4 fishes of the same colors he had presented the day before: red as coral, yellow as beaten gold, white as mountain snow, and blue as the evening sky. Dutifully, the man obeyed, casting his net into the enchanted pond and returning with 4 creatures so bright in hue they seemed almost painted by an idol god. Once again, the vizier pressed 400 gold coins into his roughened hands, and the fisherman, scarcely able to believe his luck, took the road homeward with a heart as light as his purse was heavy, for in 2 short days he had amassed a fortune of 800 coins, a sum of which, not a week before, he would not have dreamt even in sleep. The vizier, meanwhile, handed the gleaming fishes to the Roman girl and addressed her in a tone that mingled severity with the faintest suggestion of indulgence. "Had anyone but I overheard your tale of yesterday, child, you would have been condemned outright or sold off in the slave market for a paltry price. But I chose restraint. Now I bring you 4 more fishes. Yet today I shall hide myself in this kitchen corner and see for myself whether your story was truth or mere incompetence." The girl, blushing, set the pan upon the fire and poured in the oil. When it hissed and spat, she dropped in the 4 fishes, and once more the kitchen wall cracked apart like a split fig. Again, the radiant maiden stepped forth, reed wand in hand, her voice gentle as dawn. "O fishes! O fishes! Do ye yet remember the covenant sworn in ancient days?" And the fishes, writhing in the seething oil, answered with a single voice, "Yes, yes, we remember, and we abide by our oath." The maiden struck the pan a second time, it overturned, the fishes fell upon the tiles, and she, as before, vanished through the fissure in the wall, which closed upon her like the lips of one who keeps a secret. The vizier, who had witnessed all with his own eyes, trembled in wonder. His doubt gave way to conviction. The Roman slave had spoken nothing but truth. Still shaken, he hastened to the audience chamber and recounted everything, what he had heard the day before and what he himself had now seen. The Sultan, listening, pursed his lips and said, "I believe you, but my heart insists upon seeing it for myself. The matter is too fantastic to be accepted by hearsay." So, for the 3rd time, they sent for the fisherman. As soon as he appeared, the Sultan himself bestowed 400 more gold coins upon him and said, "Go at once and bring me 4 more of these wondrous fishes, such as you have brought these 2 days past." The fisherman departed, half in fear, half in rapture, for by now he had received 1,200 gold pieces, an unthinkable treasure to a man who had never seen 12 in his life. He hurried to the pool, drew his net, and returned with 4 more fishes, bright as ever, which he laid reverently before the Sultan. The Sultan commanded, "There is no need that I should go to the kitchen. Make ready a fire here in the hall itself. Let the slave girl bring oil and pan, and let her repeat before my very eyes what has twice been done already." So it was arranged. The fire crackled, the oil bubbled, and the 4 fishes were laid upon it. Then, once again, the wall split apart. But this time, not the dazzling maiden appeared, but a hideous black slave, coarse of feature, brutish in form, and armed not with a slender reed but a heavy cudgel. He strode into the hall without so much as a glance at Sultan, vizier, or trembling girl, and struck the pan with his stick, bellowing, "O fishes! O fishes! Do ye yet remember your oath of old?" And the fishes, scorched and sputtering, answered as before, "Yea, yea." We are faithful to our oath." Then, with a blow of his cudgel, he overturned the pan, sending the fishes tumbling across the marble floor, and vanished into the same fissure, which sealed behind him. The Sultan, beholding this monstrous apparition, was seized at once by awe and dread. For a while he could not even speak, so tightly did fear bind his tongue. The girl, as on the previous days, fell senseless to the floor. At last the Sultan, recovering his voice, turned to the vizier and said in tones sharp with suspicion, "All this must spring from that wretched fisherman. Send men after him at once." The order was scarcely given when the fisherman was dragged into the hall. Still flushed with hope of receiving yet another purse of coins, he started in confusion at the sight of the executioner, who appeared at the Sultan's gesture with drawn sword. A tremor ran through him, and he thought to himself in terror, "So this is the revenge of the accursed demon. He has contrived to bring me to my death." The Sultan, his face dark with wrath, cried out, "You are a sorcerer. For 3 days you have deceived me with your beguiling fishes and lured demons and magicians into my palace. Now you shall pay with your head." The fisherman, pale and shaking, stammered, "My lord, what offense have I committed? If I have taken from you 1,200 gold coins, it was only at your command, and indeed I have scarcely spent a groat of it. Gladly will I return all to you. Spare me, for I am innocent." The vizier, whose shrewdness was equal to his caution, bent to the Sultan's ear and whispered, "Majesty, it seems plain this fellow knows nothing of the matter. Ask him only where he finds such fishes, and the truth will come clear." So the Sultan questioned him, and the fisherman, in fear of death, told the tale from beginning to end, of the demon, the enchanted pond, and the bargain struck. Sultan and vizier alike listened closely, and in the end were persuaded he spoke truth. Then the Sultan asked, "And how far lies this pond from my palace?" The fisherman answered, "Behind the mountain yonder, lord. With half a day's walk I reach it easily." The Sultan's brow furrowed. He knew his dominions too well to believe such a claim. The distance must be greater, he thought, but the vizier, ever prudent, said, "It may be, sire, that fear makes him conceal the truth, or else that by sorcery he travels a road that others cannot see." Thus resolved, the Sultan ordered a small company to be prepared. The fisherman was kept close in the palace that night, and at dawn he set out with Sultan, vizier, and guard. For 3 days and nights they marched, over 4 mountains, until at last they came upon the very pond, glittering like a mirror of colored fire in the wilderness. When the Sultan saw it with his own eyes, and the fishes swimming within in hues no artist could contrive, he turned to his vizier and said softly, "Here I shall sit alone and seek to learn the secret of these creatures. Pitch the tents at a distance, that none but you may see my signal, should danger threaten. As for the army, let them know nothing of this matter." But when the king returned to the lakeside, the sun had already dipped below the horizon, and the air was heavy with the quickening gloom of evening. Desiring to take the measure of that broad and silent water, he drew his sword from its scabbard. Whether from prudence or from habit, he could not have said, and set off northwards along the eastern bank. Presently, in the deepening shadow, he perceived a dim outline, and advancing cautiously discerned, to his astonishment, the form of a palace towering into the night sky. What puzzled him most was why, in the clear light of day, such an edifice had wholly escaped his notice. He came to the rear of its walls, and what walls they were, one brick fashioned of pure gold, the next of veined marble, alternating with a splendor so fantastical it might well have been the whimsy of a dream. Round and round he went, calling out in a loud voice to summon the inhabitants, but there came no answer. The palace had two massive iron gates, one facing north, the other south, both standing wide upon their hinges. He struck each with its knocker. Silence replied. Once more he circled the vast enclosure, and at last, through the northern gate, set behind the lake itself, he entered. Still he called, still there was no response. Within, the king found himself in a hall of such magnificence as surpassed anything he had known, either in the chronicles of his reign or in the reports of foreign lands. He wandered for a while, marveling, until fatigue pressed upon him, and he sat down in a corner to ease his weariness. Rising again, he discovered himself in yet another chamber, its floor laid with brocaded carpets, a fountain at its center. At each corner of the basin crouched a lion, cast in red gold, and from the mouths of those lions there issued not water, but streams of pearls and precious stones that clattered into the pool with an opulence that mocked utility. Then suddenly, borne upon the silence, there came to his ears the sound of a human voice. He halted, listening. A man was chanting verses, the words heavy with sorrow.
No fortune has freed me, the heavens turn away. Sorrow follows city streets, a shadow I can't sway.
And even as the king of our tale stood in that enchanted hall, startled by the melancholy of those lines, the sultan who listened to Shahrazad's telling yielded at last to slumber, and sleep carried him off into gentle oblivion. But Shahrazad's fortune was wakeful, and her wits alert, for it was not decreed that so soon should her head lie beneath the sword of the executioner. Thus was the tale of the seventh night, folded into the hush of morning.